And today we are with our presenter, Aspasia Dania, and she will be presenting Rethinking Writing, Giving Voice to Academic Abstracts. And I'm very excited about this today. And let me just submit one person, okay? And I want to thank everyone for being here today with us, and actually thrilled to host this webinar as a new member of the Photo Voice Worldwide team, and thrilled to see some familiar faces, but also to see some new faces as well. Okay, so before we get started, I want to just recite this land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that our headquarters are located on the ancestral land of the Nipmuc peoples in central Massachusetts. We honor the Nipmuc Nation's historic and continuing Native community. We are grateful for the nation's ongoing work to maintain their heritage, educate Nipmuc and non-Nipmuc alike, and share their sacred trust in peace and friendship, despite the historic injustices inflicted upon the Nipmuc peoples. So thank you for allowing me to give that land acknowledgement. And again, I welcome you all. Okay. Also, if you have, if you could kindly just mute just for the initial part of the presentation. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is just present to you some of the guidelines. Again, I want to thank you for being here, and I'm sure this is going to be a very inspiring webinar that we're all looking forward to. So for questions and chat, so we're going to keep all the questions to the end. This is at the end. Hopefully we'll have about 15 to 10 minutes where you can drop some of your questions in the chat. You can also, if you like, do that throughout the session. I'll be monitoring the chat, and I'll make sure that those questions, that we ask those questions at the end during the Q&A. And we'll try to obviously address as many questions and reflections as time allows, again, at the end of the presentation. In regards to the etiquette community, we thank you, of course, in advance for being professional and kind with your comments and questions. We are all here to learn from one another. The recording, so yes, we will be recording the session today, and you will receive a link to this recording through Eventbrite. I believe we still do it through Eventbrite, but if that's not the case, then I'll make sure that you get the appropriate link to the recording at the end. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay. So as you can see here, we are Photo Voice Worldwide. Our niche is expertise in participatory photography and photo voice, the photo voice method. Our goal at Photo Voice Worldwide is to help individuals and organizations worldwide use this method safely, ethically, and successfully, and to create a global community for photo voice peer-to-peer support and continuing education. So that's why you see our tagline here: show stories, share power, and change lives. It's because of this, we have this tagline because we believe Photo Voice can do a lot to help people, and we hope to see more Photo Voice Worldwide programs around the world. And how do we do this? Why do we want more of these wonderful projects to happen around the world? We try to contribute by offering trainings in person and online. We also are very committed to building community. And if you visit our website, you can see we have a community section. We also have a lot of our presenters, speakers, and like-minded individuals contributing blog posts around how they use the photo voice method. We also do consulting, and we also create a lot of products around photo voice. And before we introduce Aspasia, we also want to let you know about our upcoming conference, Photo Voice Aiming for Impact, the 2024 virtual conference that will take place from October 16th through the 19th. And we're working really diligently and really hard to bring this conference to you, and we're really excited about it. You can, if you go to our website, you can see a link that will take you directly to the Photo Voice, the page where you can register or learn more about the upcoming conference. And I'm also happy to also include and to announce that Aspasia will also be serving us at the conference as a mentor. And I think, remind me what day that is, Aspasia, that day that you're, is it Thursday that you're, if not, I will send you a link.
I don't remember exactly. I need to check.
I'll send a link.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so finally, I get to the honor of introducing our presenter today, Aspasia Dania. She's a teacher, an educator, an author, and a mentor. She is the assistant professor and director of the Sports Pedagogy Laboratory at the School of Physical Education and Sports Science at the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, Greece. She also lectures at a doctoral, master's, and undergraduate level on the topics of sports pedagogy, physical education, teacher education, and post-qualitative research, all with a focus on equity, democracy, diversity, and inclusion. If that weren't enough, she's also the co-author of 7 books, 45 peer-reviewed articles, and 18 book chapters, and has presented more than 80 research papers at national international conferences. So she's no stranger to conferences. And we're so thrilled that you're going to be with us as well. So thank you, and thank you so much for being here with us, Aspasia, and for doing this with us. We're very eager to learn from you today. So let me just admit a few more people coming in. And then, so what's going to happen now is I'm going to stop sharing, and then Aspasia is going to share and take over the presentation. And we will listen and learn from her. And then, like I said, 15 minutes before the end, we will open it up to questions and answers. And I will definitely help facilitate that towards the end. Okay, so let me stop sharing. And over to you, Aspasia.
Thank you so much, Diana, and everyone who's here today. I'm very excited for being here. I just want to tell you some small history of how I came to Photo Voice. 3 years ago, we organized a workshop at my university, and I met a colleague who was doing qualitative research, and she said that I was using photo elicitation. So I said, wow, this is what I was missing from my research. So I started contacting Photo Voice. I learned with Laura, and I joined volunteer at the conference. And apart from the knowledge and skills that I acquired during all this process, I was amazed, and I'm still amazed by the kindness of people in Photo Voice. I mean, it's not something that I say to praise people or to make you feel different, but there is a kindness and a very collegial spirit for between people working in Photo Voice, and this is I think what made for me the most the biggest difference, because you don't find it easily. A group of people working so collaboratively and creatively to producing these new forms of knowledge. That's why I'm also excited of being here today to share with you and co-construct what the topic of this webinar will be. And I'm very much looking forward to listening to your views and to your opinions, because this topic that I'm going to talk about today is a kind of new to me as well. I'm engaged in post-qualitative research the last year. I've been engaged a lot with book writing and article writing, because I found in post-qualitative research something that was missing from my recipe of writing, of thinking, of doing research. So maybe it's something that you will also find interesting, and I'm looking very much forward to listening to your opinions. As Diana said, I'm working in Greece. I'm now in Greece. It's raining outside. That's why I am confined in a small room. It's very unusual in the last days rain in Greece. But in case you visit Greece, I will be very much happy to meet you here. So I'm going to share my screen. Hope that everything will go fine with technology. So I don't know, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I found this picture today as I was scrolling down in the internet, and I found it very interesting because I think it has to do a lot with the topic of our webinar. Usually we try to chase academic writing. Usually we try to be in the spirit of writing, to impress, to make a difference with the people that were or with the audience that we are aiming at. On the other hand, if we let ourselves more free and get inspired from what is happening in our everyday practice, in our interactions, relationships with other people, with the world we're living in, maybe it will be much more easier to attract the audience in what we're doing, instead of just chasing what we need to chase when we produce academic writing. I'm very much involved in academic writing lately because that's what academia is. But on the other hand, I find expression in writing. So sometimes I write just to escape from negative thoughts or from overthinking. So for me, writing is something that is done for many purposes and not only for academic reasons. So I just want to share with you this perspective of mine, and maybe you will also find it interesting. So when we were talking about what could be best to introduce to this webinar, we thought that we needed to find a change in our academic writing. But why do we need to find change in writing? Or is there really a reason for doing so? We're just trying to be different from others. As I told you, by engaging in post-qualitative readings, I found that it's not worth looking to be different from others. It's worth appreciating difference per se. It's worth feeling that difference is the norm and not just being different to prove that we are something else from others. So if we try to find a way to change our academic writing, I want to share with you that we're not doing this just to impress people or to produce an impact, but because we want to attract the audience attention in really engaging what we're writing and what we're trying to communicate. So for me, change is the appreciation of difference as the norm. By trying to find some slides for my PowerPoint here, I ran into many of these, and this was one that attracted very much my attention because it introduced me to some experiences and to some sensations that I have from my past, even though I'm a middle-aged woman, so I have lots of experiences of the previous years. And I remember as a young child, the sound of these material things, or the sensation of touching, feeling, smelling, listening. And this is something that gives birth to memories, is something that makes me feel 100% engaged in what I'm doing. So by introducing you to the webinar, I'm asking from you to engage with all your senses, to attend the webinar in the most embodied and not normal state as you had previously. In the start of the webinar, someone said to Erica, "It's nice to see you," and I was wondering that we don't see Erica, but it's also nice to see Erica. So it's something 100% of what I'm talking about. Let's try not to be with the norm. Let's try to be with our senses. Let's try to be with our daily reality. Let's try to be ourselves when we're starting to engage in this webinar, so that we can touch base with what I'm trying to communicate as a different form of thinking about academic writing. So I decided here, maybe I want to see you, but I also need to show the presentation. So I will keep moving. I decided to use a crystal metaphor. I'm reading a lot Gilles Deleuze, the French philosopher, and he's using a lot of concepts. He's producing lots of concepts in his texts, one of which is the crystal metaphor. So today I'm going to use the crystal metaphor as an idea that can help us think in a different way about academic writing. What is the crystal in this present case? This is just a representation of a crystal, but bring in your mind something that has different edges, different surfaces, different reflections, and produces always different images. So let's build on the crystal as a metaphor for engaging in thinking about academic writing that is innovative, but in the sense that I communicated before, it escapes traditional or conventional structures and enables us to think differently. What is different with the crystal? Based on the Deleuzian philosophy, the crystal is different because it has as a three, it works in three different ideas, with three different ideas, one of which is multiplicity. Within the crystal, we can see various reflections, various colors, various shapes, various edges. And if we look at this as ideas and concepts that are interconnected and multifaceted when we're writing, then we work with one aspect of the crystal metaphor in our writing. So one aspect is multiplicity. The second aspect is simultaneity. Excuse my English because it's a little bit Greek English, but it's also post-qualitative. So by this, we embrace all these multiple perspectives and realities simultaneously. This is not just one reflection happening on a surface of the crystal. It's one reflection next to an edge, next to another reflection, next to a slope, next to another edge of the crystal. And within this multiplicity, multiple perspectives and realities are simultaneously presented. So this bring this also to your writing, meaning that we don't just interpret something statically, but we embrace multiple perspectives. And the underlying idea is that all this understanding and all this viewing and all this interconnectedness brings a transformation. Transformation first to our sensing about what we are doing exactly at that moment, and afterwards, based on that transformation, the transformation in our academic writing is something that will come. I mean, we don't push ourselves to be transformative. Transformation occurs because we understand this evolving nature of the concepts that we're working in. In contrast to reflection, within a mirror, we see a reflection. The reflection is like a photograph. It's like an X-ray that begins by selecting or isolating, because with reflection, we reproduce. On the other hand, when we use the crystal metaphor, we don't talk about a reflection, but we talk about a sparkle. So this sparkle always functions in relation to a set of potential things that are going to happen, which are not predetermined. I mean, bring as an example, think that you are holding this crystal and you are just moving your hand up and down, that there is sun on that crystal. The sun will produce a million of reflections, and there is lots of potential for every one of these reflections to entangle with one another, to assemble with other things, and to produce different situations, realities, circumstances, images, or other reflections that can never be predetermined. So instead of just reflecting what we are talking about, we are sparkling the sensation of the moment when we are writing. So by engaging with all these latent concepts, which are not very latent, if you, as I said at the beginning, if you embody these ideas and you don't reproduce them. So if we embody these ideas, then we feel change coming as true becoming, instead of just perpetuating or reproducing habits of thought or habits of academic writing. And usually, all the academic texts, all the academic lectures, all the academic courses um, help students to learn one way of thinking, which is not always the correct way of thinking, or it's not the only way of thinking, or it's not their own way of thinking. So instead of just reproducing them, let's try to bring this change by embracing a new becoming by engaging in our writings. So, how does that sparkle bring change or difference to our academic writings or to our writings generally? When we work with a sparkle, we experiment. We don't take something as granted, but we experiment always in contact with what is real. And I know you have all heard and you've also experienced that what is real out there, we don't know if my reality is the same to your reality, or if the reality is the reality that I'm interpreting, or is there a reality? When we start thinking about this, it's not just to debate existing ideas, but to experiment with difference. And usually Deleuze says that we're not seeking for solutions, but if we want to produce new ways of thinking, we need to seek for problems. If we seek for a solution and we say, okay, this is a solution to the problem, then we stop and pack that concept and leave it to the side. But on the other hand, if one problem brings the thinking or the idea or a question of a new problem, which brings the experimentation of new circumstances, then our thinking opens up. So, first of all, we need to experiment when we're writing. And experimentation is a rather slow process. And that is where I found lots of value when working with pictures, because pictures can be as abstract can give you as abstract forms of thinking as you want. So one way of experimenting is also using pictures or photos. The second idea is construction. So by working with this crystal metaphor, this crystal sparkle, we don't reproduce reflection of other thinking, forms of thinking, or of other ideas, or reflections of theories, or reflections of even the interpretation of what some people told us in some interview, but we co-construct them. And in order to co-construct ideas, in order to co-construct concepts, we need to be attentive not to what we perceive that is real, but what we sense that is real with all our senses and with real engagement in the process. And this journey has multiple entry points. So I think this is magical. We just don't jump on a train which is called academic abstracts and start in one destination and depart on another, but we can have multiple entryways. So, and the more we go out and we go into the concept, the more difference we produce, and we cannot go back to what we thought as same before. So, in order to give voice to our academic writing, we need to embrace multiple ideas in their assemblage. And the term assemblage comes from the French word engagement, if I pronounce it correctly in French, which means agency. So the assemblage is not a static connection of ideas. I mean, I bring a photo, I bring some interview text, I bring some readings, I bring some theories, I make an assemblage, and then I go and reflect on what is happening. This assemblage is what produces a new agency in what I'm writing. So the more things that come into this assemblage, the more agentic my writing and my thinking will be. On that premise, we need interdisciplinary ideas in order not to impose a specific disciplinary hierarchical structure in what we're doing. Giving my own example, when I started getting out of my discipline, which is physical education, and working with other disciplines such as sociology, psychology, philosophy, and many others, I found lots of value and lots of new ideas that I had never thought about. And this, when brought back to the assemblage of my own discipline, made me feel very agentic and think and view ideas differently. And above all, we need to be reflective in a non-binary and non-linear way of thinking. I mean, this is good or bad, this is male, female, this is black or white, this is qualitative and this is quantitative, but instead use all this as a continuum of ideas based on which we are going to reflect, fragment, and assemble again. In this way, sometimes you don't feel guilty if you don't know some things, or you don't feel disempowered because you don't have the best idea at the moment, or you're not as innovative as you're expected. Innovation takes time. So in order to be innovative, we need to reflect on what we are doing and feel agentic in what is happening in terms of writing and in our readings. So let's explore with some more concrete examples how could we give a voice to our academic writings. I don't know if there is some question or something that at this moment you need to ask before I go to the next part, which is more practical. Okay, I see Mala is nodding her head, so I go on. So how can we do that? Sometimes with my own supervisors, when I was doing in my PhD, I remember them speaking and saying some things that for me at that moment seemed impossible, or maybe I didn't understand much what they were saying. It's expected not to understand some ideas concretely at the moment they are presented. Ideas need to be elaborated. Concepts need to be created and recreated. So we focus on our interactions and what is happening between us before we go and check the ideas that we produce. So here are some concrete examples of how you can use the previous metaphor in your own writings, but these are not the only examples. These are examples that come from my thinking, from my perspective, and from my research assemblage at this point of time that we are now. What do we need when we start writing? An abstract for a conference or an academic paper or even a blog, because sometimes some of you may be engaged in producing blogs or in producing articles for academic and non-academic journals, statements. Maybe you are working in some companies and they need to produce some reports and bring life and particularly voice to these forms of writing. So we need a problem statement. And this problem statement is something that needs to come from a topic that interests you. So my suggestion and my advice is before producing an abstract for a conference or for whatever reason, please find a topic that interests you. If we are not interested, we may not be 100% interested, but we need to have personal interest for what we're doing, because otherwise we're not able to produce a statement of the problem because we don't understand the case or we're not at the position to see the problems. And remember, I said, it's good to find a problem. It's best to find a problem rather than a solution. So after we produce a problem statement, we need some research questions and some aims of why we are engaged in this problem, what we're trying to find out, and why are we doing this. This is a very important part of the process, and sometimes we usually skip this, or we produce research questions and aims in a rather naive way because we're eager to proceed with the methodology. And this is something that may be tricky sometimes, because the real essence, if there is an essence, of research inquiry is this that focuses on the research questions. Research questions need to be critical and need to be very much connected with the problem that you have stated. Afterwards, you need a clear research plan. Here comes the methodology. Sometimes my students say, I will use interviews. What are your research questions? Is your problem statement? I don't know, but I heard about interviews and I like this type of methodology. And I spent lots of time advising them that we don't use interviews because we like interviewing people. You can use interviews, you can engage in conversation with people because you like it, because you are an extrovert, because you like communicating, but this is not the reason for framing a study. You need first to engage with the problem statement, have concrete research questions and aims, and afterwards come with a research plan which may employ interviews or may not. And the change here comes from the crystal. So what we said before about fragmentation, interdisciplinarity, non-hierarchical thinking, reflection, and all these ideas that bring a different assemblage to our problem statement is where I think difference is produced. So first, as I said, we engage with a topic. This is step one. We read about the topic, we sensitize, we seek for information. We develop our research or a question or research questions in the best possible way at the beginning. And even though this may change different times during our studies, we have 2 or 3 specific objectives. If we have more, that's no problem, but the more structured you develop it as a process, the less agency you will have during its stages. So for me, it's better to have a broad, open research question at the beginning and see if you need more than 2 or maybe 3 specific objectives. Don't structure, don't confine your objectives. We need to define the population of interest and methods, and I think here is a lot of discussion, especially between advocates of qualitative and quantitative research. And if we talk about post-qualitative research, the meaning of population is totally different. We may not have a population of interest, but we have a concepts of interest. So there we engage with a game between different concepts. We fold them and unfold them, and we play with this process to produce new meanings. So when we put the crystal to develop a problem statement, I will give to you 3 specific examples of different types of problem statements, and I will use some articles, and these articles can be shared afterwards together with a recording of the presentation as articles that are suggested readings in order to understand better how the crystal elements can be introduced in these different problem statements. Which I believe may help you understand better what we're talking about. So there are 3 types of research problems, usually in research. Some problems that create statements based on a concept, some problems that are action-based, and some problems that are value-based. And here are the examples. So when we're trying to define a problem statement about a problem or a fact that is concept-based, it means that we may have 2 conflicting facts or concepts that present an inconsistency. For example, here is a problem statement, not a problem statement. Here is a sensitizing idea for developing a problem statement. It says, we would like the best undergraduates to become professors. Here is one fact, but the base salary is not commensurate with the salaries these students could command. So here we have two facts. One fact is the best undergraduates becoming professors, and the other fact is that the salaries of these people usually are not in alignment. So here is two conflicting concepts that present an inconsistency. This statement is concept-based, and we will develop a problem statement by working with this inconsistency. If we want to apply the crystal in this particular type of statement, we may use fragmented or assemblage style writing in order to produce an academic text or academic abstract that utilizes this post-qualitative concept of the crystal. And how we are doing this, here is an example of this article. I have the details of the article here, and I will forward it to you after the presentation. In these articles, they tried to produce, to present doctoral writing as an assemblage in time and space. And within the article, they used different things in order to produce the feeling and the sensation of the experience of doctoral writing. So in the case of our concept-based statement, maybe while describing the best undergraduate students or the best students, instead of just describing their profiles as the best undergraduate students, we could use this form of writing that assembles different things. They used photos, they used elements, they used interviews, they used materials in order to describe the sensation and the experience of the doctoral student who was writing to take his doctoral degree. I mean, this is a way of escaping the linear thinking of what is best student, and usually in research we could find the description of the best student as that the student that has the best grades. But here, the best student may be described in relation to his or to her experiences and the way that space-time matterings influenced these experiences. Another problem statement can come from statements that are action-based. So here, there is a description. Metro technicians are required to be trained in how to react to an unforeseen event, but the subway tunnels are not always well maintained to facilitate the action of the technician. Here, we see a statement that produces an undesirable effect due to an apparent lack of options. So here, our writing needs to be action-based. We are going to produce a statement that will bring an idea for us to engage in action. One suggestion is to embrace interdisciplinary approaches or case studies in order to describe this statement by putting lots of ideas in what action can be perceived in this specific case. And by using the crystal metaphor, the case study is not something that reflects the characteristics of a case study that we have read in the past. Because if you remember, the crystal is sparkling. So the sparkle here may come from minor assemblages or different scientific ideas, concepts that are immanent to the situation that is described in that statement. So instead of imposing a case study to this specific statement, we look in this statement and we look at this specific description of people working in the metro stations to see what are the different scientific perspectives that are produced, what is the idea that is coming bottom up from this case study, instead of just imposing a reflection on how we perceive this specific event. And remember, this case study is an event. It's not static. It's something that's always changing. And how is it changing? By all the capacities produced and reproduced. So another example, while working with this case assemblage form of writing can be found in this article, and this is can be used with the example that we have been talking now. And the last kind of statements that will produce a problem statement is value-based. Listen here, employees believe that their outfit is a matter of freedom of choice, but companies require a specific dress code. Here we see a conflict between, which is value-based, between what people consider as moral, ethical, worth, or desirable. These value-based statements can incorporate lots of reflective and non-linear forms of thinking. And here we can embrace the complexity and multiplicity of our own experiences. Our own experiences, especially in terms of value, are usually very complex and multiple, and it is worth engaging in reflective and non-linear processes and produce text that is creative, dissolving, generative, and integrated. And I think that this is our own, the multiplicity and the complexity of our own experiences will give our signature to what we are producing. And here is another very nice article that is exploring writing as an assemblage by using similar concepts. So here is a structure. You can use the structure to produce your abstract, but please try to integrate within this structure this new form, this crystallic or crystal becoming and not crystallized ideas that we're talking before. Try to make your concept sparkle. Try to escape structure, even if we use this structure. And please think, what type of statement are you working with? Are you working with a value-based statement? Are you working with an action-based statement? What particularly are you seeking to produce? And here is, but we don't have time, but I will also post on the chat a link. Maybe you can use it in your own time as an exercise to produce your own crystal map by using a central concept that is related to what you already do as part of your research or as part of your career or as part of your writings. Maybe you are an author, maybe you are an artist, maybe you're in whatever form of writing you are engaged. So try to use this mirror space for creating your own crystal map and giving it different colors, different shapes, different lines that will represent new forms of thinking about this central concept based on what we have discussed so far. So I think I'm very much on time.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And I'm just very excited to listen to what you're thinking and discuss with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Aspasia. Thank you so much. There's so much to unpack there. And I think we were right in the beginning. You need it like a minimum of 2 hours, I think. Thank you so much for that. Yes. And so we'd like to open it up now to any questions that you may have for Aspasia. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question, or if you like, you can drop your question in the chat and I can present it to the group. So I'll give you maybe a couple seconds to maybe formulate some questions that you may have. And while we're doing that, I have a question for you, Aspasia. I'm just curious how your students receive, especially sort of the fragmentation and assemblage component of your instruction. Do they find it, is it very much a foreign concept to them? And do they in any way, like, how do they receive it? Do they struggle assembling those things that might inform their problem statement?
I think that's a very nice question, and I think that it's expected to not understand, because this gets you in the process of thinking differently. And usually I loved reading in these the legend readings the idea of the origami. It's you know the origami technique.
Mhm.
The origami, in one of the texts, they described let's think about a concept or an idea of or academic writing, in our example, as an origami ornament. Origamis are not cut and paste pieces on a paper. It's the same paper folded and unfolded in different ways. So we're not trying to cut, fragment, paste, assemble, collect, interpret, find meanings, collaborate, mixed or not mixed. We're just folding our thinking differently. And this is very difficult in a very structured and very linearly and accelerated society to engage in these slower and more chaotic forms of thinking. But if you let yourself loose in this process and you just follow the flow, you just start seeing things in this way. It takes time to start thinking like this, but it's really very much worth the effort. I mean, it helps you find lots of agency that, I don't know, it was locked somewhere and waiting for you to find it.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any questions? We still have a few minutes and oh, Mala, please.
Hi, thank you so much. Um, so I'm just gonna I'm not sure what I'm gonna exactly say, but it'll come out.
Perfect. This is a
Oh,
perfect
yeah.
start.
So, I'm thinking about this sort of conflict, as you were sort of presenting, there's the this and that. And I think about academic writing and how we're all taught to be academic writers, right? And that we have reviewers. Like so there's this struggle, here's the conflict between what we're supposed like how we're supposed to write, but also the conflict, for those of us who are in academia, like those who are valuing that writing, to say whether or not we actually get published and whether or not this writing is academic. So there is this conflict, and I wonder about maybe just some of your thoughts around how people in a very practical way have to do this, have to write and publish in order to get tenure and promoted and and be researchers in a system that doesn't allow for crystal thinking.
Thank you very much for your question. It's very timely for me as well, because I'm also in this process as everyone in academia. It depends on where you need to publish, where you publish, because there are lots of great journals that receive and accept and have call for articles that are in this way. But I learned slowly as the time goes by that we don't need to rush this form of thinking, just what I said at the beginning, just to produce something different. You need to feel at ease and inspired when you write this way. Otherwise, your writing is very static. And usually all these texts that employ metaphors like the crystal or many other metaphors say that please don't use the concepts in a naive way. And they don't mean that you are naive, but if you don't if you are not yourself persuaded about the value of these ideas, it's better to spend some more time engaging with these readings until you find one of these readings that it is very inspiring. And for sure, I escaped the idea that I wanted to convince some other people that this is research. I have a friend that says, I trust you because you are an academic, as I trust the pilot when I'm entering an airplane. When I'm entering an airplane, I don't ask the pilot, do you know how to drive the airplane? I'm just trusting. So if you're an academic and you're working in academia and you're eager to produce research that has value, that has impact, that you believe, then you don't need to persuade anyone because you're just an academic that was hired for this purpose. I mean, this is your work. So we need to don't feel that we're doing something different. So we need to describe or explain the underlying ideas. For me, what we need is to accept these forms of thinking if we want to experiment with small parts of these forms of thinking, even some writings and some workshops, experiential workshops. And if we find value, then engage with these forms of thinking. It's not something that somebody will impose to anyone, as it happens with all types of writing. But I can understand very much what you're saying, and thank you very much for your question.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mala, for that. I think that's a really important question to sort of explore and define. So thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Maybe you need a few more seconds to sort of formulate your ideas around these concepts, these new ideas. We do have a couple more. I have another question. I'm curious if if is there any time during the fragmentation and assemblage that a student may sort of reconceptualize their problem statement, or does it bring up maybe does it help define some of the objectives that they may have? Like, do you find that it kind of helps them to sort of hone in on obviously a very more specific objective? Do you find that happening when working with your students?
Usually with students, we are working with small pieces of different of these ideas, because students also need to produce some text, needs to produce their thesis. They need to spend time in order to engage fully with these ideas. And sometimes they have time constraints, they're working or whatever, they need to have their diploma. So even it's still enough to sensitize people in these forms of thinking and help them to see that there is also different forms of thinking in their own thought, not out there, that are ready to be discovered. And sometimes we're discussing this when we're trying to interpret data from interviews. We feel there are cases that we feel that we are imposing our interpretation and our perspectives on what participants are saying. And this is when discussions start about these concepts. And the more we engage in dialogues, the more we help students, even though at the end they need to come up with a research question. They need to formulate this research question, and we're living in a very structured academic world, so it's very difficult to be very latent and very open. But there are some students who are really eager to engage with these writings. It depends on how and whether you find value in this. But for students, yes, we usually suggest a very specific structure for them for working, because you need some structure in order to destructure afterwards.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So so Aspasia, maybe you could share again some of your contact information, and
Yes.
Just so that we have ways in which we can continue conversation with you, reach out to you if you're amenable to that, of course.
I will write on the chat here my email if you want to send me an email. And also, sorry.
Yes.
I will also post here the link. There is here a question from Erica.
Yes, I see that. If you'd like to answer that, I think we can extend it a minute or so. So, and the question is from Erica is, how have you applied this outside of your academic writing? How did it go?
I'm putting here the link to the mirror space if you want to make a conceptual map there.
Thank you.
I haven't applied it yet, but I have proposed a seminar, post-qualitative workshop in a forthcoming international conference that I'm going to work with things and materials and concepts and ideas with people. And I think that it's very provocative for me as well, because it helps me engage in different forms of experiencing the interactions with people. And usually when I try to apply it in my everyday reality, because I don't know, I've become a little bit possessed with these forms of thinking lately, and I see them everywhere. I see things happening. The other day I was facilitating a community of teachers, and they started discussing some issues that were very agentic. One was saying something and the other was taking agency, and I felt them being empowered. So I started, and I'm not now claiming something that hasn't happened. I started seeing the forces that were exchanged between them. I started seeing physics in a way happening in front of me. And this was not because I understood physics. I'm not good at physics at all. It is because I was so much engaged with all my sensation in their in-between interaction. That's why I think instead of just focusing on the human, it's very nice to focus on the interactions between people. And this is where technology needs to be perceived differently, because here we can't produce the same interactions as we would produce if we stood in a circle, if we were all together in a room. But there are forces between us. The way that we are posting comments, the way that we are switching our cameras, the way that we are nodding our heads, the way that we are getting our voice up and down, all these are very agentic. And from the moment that I started seeing this, I mean, my reality changed. So if I answered the question.
Absolutely. And I think that that would be such an interesting conversation to have as you begin to explore that, I'm sure, in the upcoming year. So maybe we could have you back to talk about how you have.
Yes, I'm very much, I'm a little bit possessed with these ideas. Sorry.
Well, thank you so much, Sophia, for that very inspiring presentation. I really thoroughly, I'm sure we all thoroughly enjoyed learning about the crystal and sparkle, the use of the crystal and sparkle metaphor in academic writing. So I thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your insight with us. And I'd also like to say in conclusion that I thank all of you for being here. And I encourage you to continue the conversation with us. As you know, we are present on almost every social media platform, and we do our best to respond to any inquiries or questions that you have about Photo Voice Worldwide and the Photo Voice method. You can also visit our website. We do, like I said, have a community section where you can read, and there's a number of blog posts that provide just a breadth of resources for you